Welcome to the Technology Strategist, giving you the art and science of options and opportunities today.
It's not often talked about, but your ability to communicate is going to make or break your next technology strategy, innovation plan, or project. Because your ability to communicate your ideas effectively to others, either to get support or resources, or to even get better ideas from your team, you have to be able to communicate. And one of the secrets to effective communication is keep it simple. So simple, effective statements. I'm going to walk you through several things about how people acquire information and process information, and how we can use that to our advantage while developing our technology strategy. But I want you to consider this Steve Jobs quote. And he said, "You have to begin with the end user and work your way back, not the other way around." And as technology people, a lot of people like to work from the bottom up, because if you look at the OSI model, the users up here at maybe at layer 8, but then you have the application layer at layer 7, and then down to the physical. So a lot of people start their IT careers down in the physical or the network, the transport, or even the data layer. So we're comfortable looking up the stack, but not so much from our customer's perspective. So understanding that is going to be critical, because our customer needs to be successful, happy. We need to solve problems and challenges that they want or they need, because, we're trying to provide solutions or sell products, however you do it or achieve it or look at it. Producing a technology without a use is, not very useful. So let's first start looking at the optimal amount of information that people need to make decisions. It's not a lot, and there are studies that confirm this, where they have done decision studies. So if you do this bell curve, you probably have this optimal point of information. And they'll feed decision makers information, and they'll say, where do their decisions start to become less effective? And they were looking around like 8 pieces of information in this one study. But the idea is that enough is enough. There's enough good information where you can make a decision, and then there's TMI. There is too much information. And of course, maybe down here where you're not enough, and under time pressure, maybe you have to use some models or heuristics to do something. But ideally, you're trying to get to where you have enough information to make a good decision, but you're never going to have all the facts. That is true. You will never have all the information. There is a great book written in the 40s called The Psychology of Rumor by Allport. And in that book, he described 3 processes that are critical to what we're going to be talking about. When people see a scene, how do they receive information or gain input from it? What do they remember? How do those memories get distorted? The first process is the mental process of leveling. So we have leveling. This is the idea that this is why we use heuristics in our brains, or we can't see all the information around us. We pinpoint in on a few certain things. Typically, those things are based on our biases. Our brains are incredible pattern machines. So patterns we've seen before, you're going to match up. In fact, the human brain has an interesting thing. Anytime you see something like 2 dots and a line, everybody sees, most everybody sees a face. Some people do not see the face. But that is an interesting fact of our brains. But the second thing that we'll do is, now that we've leveled out or filtered out a bunch of information that we don't consider relevant, remember, our brains were built up looking for things like tigers and dangerous things that might eat us. So the ability to instantly spot those things and to take action would be incredibly important. I think that might have been an example used in Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. I get some of my books mixed up. But the next process is sharpening. Now, the idea of sharpening is that if you've already seen the pattern before and you're seeing it again, you get this reinforcement. Or you already have biases, some people might call those prejudices, where you're seeing particular things. It could be availability bias. For instance, you're thinking about buying a red car, so everywhere you go, you see all the red cars. Wow, everybody has red cars. No, you're just thinking about it more, so that's why you see red cars. And the last part of this process is once you've done both of these things, you can then assimilate the information into your brain. Now, the easiest way, you've heard square peg in a round hole. Well, your brain is using this idea of leveling and sharpening. So you get this process where you're leveling and you're sharpening information. And what you're doing is trying to get essentially this waveform of information that fits nicely into your frame or model of the world already. Because if it fits nicely into what you already know and believe, then it's easier to process for your brain. Pound for pound, your brain is an extreme energy hog. It takes a lot of calories to keep that thing ticking. And you'll always take mental shortcuts. It's called efficiency. And that's why we have heuristics and other biases that might help us make decisions quick and make it easier for our brain, but complex thought takes a lot of calories. That's why if you design your message and are very efficient, I think Mark Twain, often attributed to him, I don't know if he said it, said, I didn't have enough time to write a short letter, so I wrote a longer one instead. The idea of keep it simple, stupid, the KISS principle. There's a lot of analogies or metaphors out there that people use that talk about this principle that, and I use sometimes the term an SES brief, salient, effective statements or simple effective statements for talking to an SES, because you have to bring it up to a senior executive or a strategic level, and that means having a well-crafted message that is very economical with every single word that you choose. You can't provide too much information. That's too much room to think or to run into blind spots. That's why you have to craft your message extremely carefully, and that's why your ability to communicate that message using body language, clear voice, and other effective techniques that you can learn in presentation skills is also going to aid when you have to present. While we're on the subject of simple, effective statements, we've all had the horror stories of seeing a novel on a page when it comes to a presentation. Respect the white space. Less words, more pictures. Trust me, it's better. If you've read the book, How to Talk Like TED, the best presentations have 40 words or less. They use pictures as a backdrop, and they tell stories to communicate their ideas. The stories add value and help provide symbolism or symbols that people can assimilate very well and get some of the backdrop of your story as you're telling it. But there's another thing on the internet that is a simple packaged piece of information that travels very well, and that is a meme or a thought virus. You know, the cute picture of the kitten with the funny caption on it that everybody sends to everyone else because it's so funny. Well, those things are important to consider when developing your technology strategy. Is how can you package the information such that the most number of people can assimilate and then be able to communicate it back without being distorted to someone else. So the better your message travels without distortion, the more effective it's going to propagate, and the more likely that you're going to have a viral effect with your tech strategy, because everybody wants that. So now let's look at what people do when they receive a lot of information. Again, let's consider this from like a waveform, finding signal in the noise. Let's say you get a bunch of information, noisy data that you're looking at. This could be just what you're seeing in front of you. And what you're going to start doing is you're going to start noticing the things you're most familiar with, or the things that fit that you've already seen before, your patterns, the data that you're going to collect. They're going to fit some model of the world. So you're going to try and force this into your model of the world. And then, so once you've kind of leveled out some of the information, there's some things that you're going to start to sharpen. And let's just say that maybe because you already have a bias towards those red cars, you're going to start to see even more red cars. That's like that signal's amplified in your brain. The other thing that might happen is you might, because of a bias or a blind sight, you might completely miss some of that signal. And in fact, because you don't miss it, it's because you have some other hidden bias that is blocking and masking that from you. So when we develop our strategies or our points, our bullet points or information, what we're trying to do is to hit these high points, these signals that people will most likely understand, and that's why we have to be so economical with our words, because the more noise we put out there, the more chances people have to get trapped in different patterns or completely miss the point together because it's too obscure for them. And the last thing I'll talk about is quotes. We love quotes. A lot of people use them as an effective way to communicate ideas. But here's something I found incredibly interesting. We all know Gandhi, and you probably have heard the phrase, "Be the change you want to see in the world." In fact, sometimes people even have a t-shirt which is Gandhi's face and just "Be the change." And that's a meme. I mean, it communicates it very well. People know exactly what he's talking about. Or do they? Because here's the quote that he actually said. It's much deeper than that, but you can tell that this is a process of people leveling the amount of information and then sharpening on points that are popular so it has the power to be assimilated. But here's what he actually said. "We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do." Now you could say that people drastically misquoted him, or they boiled down an idea from that. What he said was very, very deep and very spiritual. But they boiled it down to be the change you want to see in the world, or just be the change. And people remember that. So you can have, again, the best, greatest, most detailed strategy or lengthy project plan in the world, and what you're going to lose out on is, remember that bell curve? What you're going to miss here, you're going to be way over here in TMI land. You have to shoot for the optimum, and that is the most effective transference of information to the person we're communicating with. Remember, start with that person and work backwards. We're trying to figure out what works best for that person to learn and understand what is the optimum amount of information they need to support their thoughts, maybe change their mind, change their pattern, and use that to our advantage when crafting our technology strategy. Just remember, the most important and critical aspect of your technology strategy, innovation plan, or project is your ability to communicate effectively. To start with the end user and work backwards from their perspective. I worked with a guy who, depending on the executive he talked to, he told me that he would either use a baseball metaphor or some other type of metaphor or analogy depending on who he was talking to, because he knew that that person liked and even may have, in fact, used similar metaphors when talking themselves. So he adjusted the message in order to meet the audience so that they could better assimilate the concepts he was trying to communicate. So incredibly effective, and that kind of stuff really does work. You have to consider your audience. So now that you know all these things, I hope that you'll take a second look at your technology strategy and your plans and your projects, your communication materials, how you've been briefing them, who you've been briefing them to, and ask yourself, can you improve them by reducing the amount of information, adding more pictures, and other things that would assimilate more easily so that people can understand, digest what you're saying, and spread it around without any distortion. Don't just make the change. Be the change. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.